Hello, everyone. Hopefully, you can see and hear us. Thanks so much for joining this evening. Just wait maybe a minute or so people can get settled. I think there's more than 100 people on the call today, which is really exciting. But yeah, I think I'm going to kick off. Thanks so much for joining. Like I said, this is a super exciting masterclass. Really excited because everyone here is alumni and has gone through our creative access kind of system and process and can speak to their experience, but also their individual subjective experience of what writing looks like to them as well. Today's session is all about building a sustainable and rewarding career as a writer. Whether you're interested in journalism, fiction, copywriting, research, or you're still figuring out what kind of writer you want to become, it can feel difficult to know where to start and sometimes even harder to know how to keep going. We're super lucky because we've got a brilliant panel who can kind of encourage us and maybe I guess boost our confidence in terms of what writing can look like as well. We're incredibly lucky. We've got 4 writers at different stages of their careers working across different paths in the industry. So rather than just presenting one right path, I hope today's conversation shows that there are many different ways to build a creative career. So just to run through the format of today, we'll spend about 45 minutes before opening things up to questions. So I was going to say interrogate our panelists, but it's not going to be interrogation. It's going to be a loose, relaxed conversation. We've already received lots of brilliant questions, and I've tried to embed them throughout our conversation today. But there's always time for questions. So if you've got anything, please do use the Q&A chat function, and our panelists will be able to answer those questions after the first 45 minutes as well. So just to quickly introduce myself, my name is Bill Margia. I work as the Community and Partnerships Program Manager. Got a long name and a long job title, but essentially I look after our entry-level pool of talent whilst also looking after our outreach strand of work. I program all of these masterclasses with you guys in mind, trying to make sure it's as useful as possible. And we're super lucky that our community gives back their time on a Thursday evening in July where it's still kind of muggy. And yeah, we've got 157 people in the audience, which is wild. So very grateful. Let's meet our panelists. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you can actually see the panelists talk as well. Let's see if I can do this smoothly. Yeah, I'd like to start asking for everyone to introduce themselves. So who you are, what kind of writing you do, and what your writing life looks like. I'll kick off with Gurnaik.
Hey everyone, yeah, I'm Gurnaik. I'm a fiction writer. 2 books out at the moment. My recent novel was Saraswati, and that was published last year. My writing life at the moment is sort of in a fun place where my work is a bit more, I would say, I do like multiple different part-time jobs. So I get a bit more time to work on my writing than I did before. So my 2 books were written when I was working full time, and now I have probably 2 days a week where I can feel a bit more dedicated to writing, and that allows for the sort of gestation period you sort of need when you're starting a new book. Yeah, nice to see you all.
That's so exciting. Thanks so much. Jadyn, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Jadyn. I am a writer and I am a committee admin officer for the Association of Laboratory Medicine, but I also work as the social media and comms girly for Free Books campaign. My writing practice at the moment is what I would like to call like life research. By that I mean it's a lot of journaling, writing in margins, and being with the communities that are important to me and gaining knowledge and inspiration from the work that I do. I mostly write fiction, a little bit of prose poetry, but at the moment I'm working on a magical realist novel, very slowly, but I am working on it. And hopefully it will one day get published.
I think it will. Definitely will get published. We just have to speak as if it is. Do you know what I mean? Start manifesting now. Apparently, Mercury retrogrades ended. I don't know what that means, but I think it means positive things for everyone here. That was one of our team updates today. Jem, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, yeah, thanks for joining us on a Thursday evening. My name's Bartholomew. I'm a freelance journalist. I write regularly for The Guardian and other places. I grew up in Exeter in Devon. Now I'm based in South London. In terms of kind of writing I do, I'm currently writing my first book, which is a work of narrative nonfiction about poverty in the UK. And it's sort of, after extensive reporting, it sort of follows a year in the life of four communities. It's going to be titled Threading the Needle. So about half my week is spent on that at the moment, and the other half with freelance writing. It used to be sort of less time on the book, or it kind of fluctuates depending on what stage I'm at. Um, and how much I need to sort of cover my rent and bills and so on. But as of last year, I've also been writing a weekly column called The Media Today on Mondays for Columbia Journalism Review, which is a publication based in New York. So I'm sort of balancing those two things for the most part at the moment.
Thanks, Jem. Yeah, it sounds like you're doing quite well balancing as well. I feel like so far for everyone who's introduced themselves, it's like I'm writing, but also trying to do lots of other things and kind of surviving as well. Sophie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Sophie. I'm the training and programs coordinator at Creative Access. So I'm like scrolling through the attendee names and I recognize loads of them, which makes me really happy. I have been at Creative Access for 2 years, but this was actually my first job that wasn't waitressing. So I worked in hospitality for like 10 years prior to Creative Access. For some of that, I was studying and I did a master's in sociology in 2023. I did my final dissertation about waitressing, and I thought that was like the longest piece of writing I would ever do in my life. And then I started trying to fictionalize it because I don't read a lot of academic writing. I read fiction and I really like it. So I use that kind of as inspiration. And now I'm writing, hopefully, a debut novel. So I'm near to like the end of a first draft of a manuscript. And yeah, on the side, I make ice cream with a partner, and I have a small ice cream business as well, called Milk-Tooth Gelato. So my writing life is very sporadic, I would say. I think I write like maybe there'll be a few days where I write every day in a row and then take about a month off. So it's taking a long, long time to write a novel, but it's fun.
Thanks so much. I was saying to Sophie, like, please talk about all the other creative stuff that you do. It's really interesting for everyone to hear as well. And straight away, everyone started smiling as soon as you said ice cream. So that's quite fun to see. So yeah, one thing, I guess the first question to kick this masterclass off is, I guess what we've learned just from our intros is that everyone's path is quite different. Even just kind of, Sophie, as you were explaining your path into being a writer, or Jadyn, kind of as you were describing your career, it's kind of like, oh, I didn't know that, I wasn't expecting to start writing, but there's some like level of like excitement, which is really nice to kind of be around and hear about from everyone here. But one thing that stood out from our audience questions, and I think what everyone's really interested in, is looking for that right path into writing, which I think even from our intros, from your guys' intros, it doesn't exist, but there are various routes in. So I'd love to hear about each of your journeys. So could each of you tell us about one turning point that helped move your career forward? Maybe we'll start off with Jadyn.
Yeah, of course. Well, I think that the time when I really realized that writing was maybe the only thing that I wanted to do long term, was much like most people during the pandemic. During that time, I turned to writing as a way of dealing with the state of the world, and talking about a lot of the things that, like, social issues that were going on at the time, and making it into something that I could manage myself in my own words, in my own world. I wrote so much during lockdown. Probably the most that I've written so far in my life. Hoping that will change soon. But yeah, whilst I was doing all of this writing, I was just entering into my A levels, and I didn't know that you could study creative writing at university, and I didn't know what I wanted to do yet. I was taking psychology, biology, photography, and RE. Um, and when I found out that I could do creative writing at university, I was kind of like, this is, how can I do anything else? I don't want to do anything else. Um, and that's where I started my journey into um, actually pursuing writing properly. But I've been writing my entire life, really, from like playing with Playmobil and like creating movies on Movie Star Planet and all of these silly little things that I did that I didn't process initially as like my mode of writing. But I think definitely the pandemic was the point where I kind of had this realization that that's something that I can do as a career. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing. It's so interesting because it's like in our day to day, it's so hard to balance these creative endeavors or like creative pursuits or even have time to brainstorm and reflect of like, what can I do with all this energy or moment or like find that momentum. And I think, yeah, the pandemic probably for a lot of people shifted a lot of things. And that's really exciting that you got to kind of sit and write and then I guess like learn more about the theory of creative writing and pursue it further in university as well. So thanks so much for sharing. Gurnaik, I'm interested in your answer with this question. What was a turning point for you?
Yeah, I did creative writing at uni as well. And then I had one story that I'd workshopped that my sort of teacher recommended like sending out, so entering into prizes, which felt like a kind of crazy thing for him to say, but a real sort of vote in confidence, I suppose. I think a lot of being a writer is a certain level of ego. Like you have to have enough ego that you're willing to expose yourself in front of other people, and to believe that you have, that what you write is worth someone else's time. It's quite a strange thing. So that was my first sort of foray into that, and I luckily got shortlisted for that. It was the Guardian Fourth Estate Prize, and yeah, that was my lucky break. Really, it got me a sort of foot in the door, and from that, there was like a party, and that's where I met my agent, and so forth. So it was quite an I would say compared to some people, boring story into being a
Mhm.
writer, because then it just sort of went on the track, I suppose. But yeah, that was my
I
story.
guess it's unexpected, but you had someone advocating for you. But it's interesting kind of hearing that like you have to kind of self-actualize and be like, oh, actually, what I'm writing, I'd like other people to hear about. And it just reminded me of if anyone's seen Girls, like HBO, Lena Dunham's Girls, where she's like, I think I'm a voice of a generation, and it's like so funny, and she's like really annoying, but it kind of makes sense. Not that I'm saying the writers here are the same in the same vein, but I think you have to kind of shed that level of like, oh, I'm putting myself out there, or like I'm standing on a soapbox kind of vibes. Gurnaik kind of mentioned I guess being shortlisted. Sophie, you were shortlisted for the Women's Prize. Maybe that's something. Maybe that's been a turning point. I don't know. What do you?
No,
Yeah.
yeah, that was the only turning point. That was it. And also I think about that quote from Girls like every single time I have to write. Um, I I wasn't really writing. I had finished studying and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. But I went to a it was called like the ESCA EC Book Fest. I think it was actually at Hachette. It was on their like nice rooftop garden. It was open. I bought a ticket, and I went to a workshop about writing. And one of the writers, Claire Coder, was actually the judge for the Women's Prize for Discoveries that year. And so she kind of mentioned it at the very end of the workshop. She was like, for anyone who does want to submit, there is an open competition currently running. That was in September. The deadline was in January. I left it till January. Don't do that. And just hearing her speak about it was really interesting because basically it's Discoveries is for a novel in progress, and they don't look for a finished um, novel in any way, but not even in terms of polish or craft. It's just they're looking for kind of promise and your ideas and potential. So that was really encouraging because I didn't have any writing experience in terms of fiction. So I submitted for that, and you just have to have 10,000 words. It has to be the start of a novel. I went to the free webinar because being at Creative Access, I know how important it is to go to webinars when people tell you that there's more information. And I submitted 10,000 words, and it got shortlisted for the Women's Prize Discoveries shortlist in 2025. So that
And
that was the turning point.
yeah, and what was it about like that specific, I guess, competition or submitting it there and then? Because part of me is thinking, I guess they made it so, I don't want to say easy, but they're kind of saying like, we're not looking for your writing to be finished, which I think there's that kind of misconception, or when you're starting off, it's like everything that I submit or write has to be ready for everyone to see, or like for it to be distributed almost. But I'm wondering if that played into just kind of, yeah, giving it a go.
Yeah, I would never have submitted my writing to anything that asked for kind of a finished piece. I remember hearing a quote, I think it was from the webinar, guys, that was like one of the judges saying, I just really want to read something that makes me, when I get to the end of the 10,000 words, I'm like, where's the rest of it? And I just thought, well, I have no idea whether I could write a novel, but I feel like I could write a really compelling opening, or at least like give that a good try. So that helped a lot. I think a lot of the time, maybe I'm speaking too soon or like wishful thinking. I think a lot of the time, like there's so much work that's done on novels by the time you read them. I think that the idea of looking for polish doesn't really exist anyway. If you're querying with agents, a lot of writers talk about, and I'd love to hear our writers' thoughts on this, about like getting your manuscript as far as you can take it by yourself before you start reaching out to agents and querying for help. So even writers that have published novels don't have necessarily like a draft that they submit that they feel really, really happy with the polish of it. So that helped as well.
Yeah, thanks so much, Soph. And Jem, I guess, what was the turning point, or was it deliberately planned for, something that happened unexpected for you in your writing career?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I have two turning points, two kind of major turning points. The first was really securing a role through Creative Access. Before that, I was kind of working in bars to make my rent in London. I'd done some kind of journalistic work experience by like sleeping on friends' sofas and that sort of thing. And I think I'd been paid £50 for an article by an online magazine or something. But getting a job, it was at the Financial Times on as a reporter on their specialist titles through Creative Access was a massive change and turning point. And I was covering things like pension funds and asset managers. It was very niche, but it was a really good training ground for learning to report on like money and power. And the staff there were really supportive. I remember going to my editor with an idea, like an investigation based on these documents, and he was like, "Yeah, let's do it. Let's pursue it." So that was a big turning point, just to have somewhere where I could really kind of learn the craft, and Creative Access was pivotal to that. The other was a kind of another stroke of luck where I managed to win a Fulbright scholarship to go out to New York and study a master's in journalism. And it was one of those things I applied for without even really imagining I could be successful. It was so like, you know, kind of outlandish to think that I would get it. And then when I did, it was kind of a crazy feeling. So yeah, being able to kind of enjoy that year in New York and kind of learn so much, but also meet and be introduced to so many sort of interesting people in the industry, who many of whom I'm still in touch with, was yeah, transformative. So it just kind of underlined the benefit of organizations like Creative Access and the communities that they build, in my journey as a journalist for sure.
Mm-hmm. Thanks so much for sharing. It's interesting because you said kind of the scholarship to New York. You kind of said, oh, by a stroke of luck, but it kind of speaks to the talent that you had, especially at the beginning, and being able to focus it. And even Sophie, like the way you're describing entering the women's prize competition, it's not really thinking about the result of it. It's just like putting yourself out there or trying it's, I guess, like doing applications is your own narrative, right? Like you're presenting yourself in a way, and yeah, kind of detaching the outcome seems to have worked out unexpectedly, which is really nice to hear as well. Yeah, thanks so much. I'm just gonna read some comments that I think will be that's been really nice. Jamie said, the last section from Sophie, you don't need for something to be tip-top polished in order to send something off, is incredibly motivational with regards to my current creative work. So thanks for that. A lot of people are interested in what the scholarship is. I don't know if they still run it, maybe not. And loads of people are feeling the same about having the thought of publishing work publicly, I guess, as well.
The scholarship was the Fulbright scholarship. There's a whole bunch on different subjects to go over to the US. So check it out. I'm pretty sure they're still running it.
Cool, that's really helpful resource. Yeah, I guess we've got so much expertise, and I guess you guys know a lot about where to continue looking for new opportunities as well, which everyone's really interested in. I want to ask, Gurnaik, you've gone from publishing an award-winning short story collection to an acclaimed debut novel in quite a short space of time. Looking back, what do you think made the biggest difference to your development as a writer?
I think it's that like really boring cliche of just dedicated time towards it. My sort of I've sort of teach a bit now, and often I see students who sort of see the writing as a means to an end, as if the goal is publication, as if the whole point of this is just to end up with like an object in the world with your name on it. You could be a graffiti artist and put your name on walls. It'd be much easier. So for me, the work itself is the fun part. It's like I'm serving the book, not the audience, and that an audience might enjoy the book is a kind of a byproduct that doesn't necessarily interest me, especially in the early stages of a project. So when I was working kind of maniacally on this second book especially, and that wasn't because I was like desperate to publish it quickly. It was just that I was having so much fun with it, and so I'd sort of wake up, because I was like, for me, work was a thing to get through. So I'd wake up, do a bit of writing. On my lunch break, I'd go to a cafe and write, and then after work, I'd sort of turn my desk around and write. And for me, that wasn't, it was about that. It's incredibly fun that we get to sit at our laptops and like just imagine stuff happening to imaginary people. It's still play for me. It's still like being a kid. And I think often I see writers who are so obsessed with this idea of publication that they've lost that sense of play, that they forget that this is a fun thing to do and it's not work, that no one's really asking you to do it. So yeah, that would be my advice for people in this audience, is that it's not a step to get to an end. Then you're missing the point.
Yeah, I really like that. So I guess it's one of the biggest differences has been that persistence, but the persistence has become easier because you're kind of living or like playing, like you're saying, right? Like it's almost like an escape from the kind of maybe mundane day to day, where like it sounded like you're kind of living in the story a bit. Interesting as well, you're saying you turned your desk around. Was that like an intentional way of like splitting?
Yeah, that was from COVID.
Away from like my other life to like being a writer kind of energy.
Yeah, I think so. I think because also I was using my work laptop at the time to write my book, which I wouldn't recommend. But no, I think also it's easy to say from where I'm sitting, because maybe once you've got that first publication of whatever it is, you can start to take it more seriously. Like you can see it, like even Jem, you talking about that like £50 you got. I'm sure that just allowed the idea of writing for money to become like a real thing in the world. So yeah, as much as I talk about play, I think it's also giving your space to think, like when I'm dedicating an hour a week or 2 hours a week or whatever it is, whatever you can fit into your schedule, it's that you are taking it seriously. And for that hour, you are a writer. Doesn't matter whether you've got a Pulitzer Prize or you've never published anything. You're writing in that moment. You're only a writer for when you're actually writing, right? So yeah.
Yeah, I really like that. Our colleague Jasmine, who's on the call, she's making notes on this. She's said something very similar. She was like, if you just write, you're a writer. Like I think it kind of cuts off that looking for external validation, which feeds into, you know, wanting to be a writer and then eventually being published, like you were saying, Gurnaik. Like that can be maybe a barrier or something that's stopping that element of fun. But kind of owning what you're writing is really helpful as well, just for yourself, I think. And that's speaking to the, I guess, because we were saying like your success has happened very in like a short space of time, but it's probably not felt like that as well. Like you've kind of built momentum and like, I guess, a routine and habits as well that supported your creativity as well. So thanks so much for sharing. Jadyn, I wanted to ask, I guess, because Gurnaik's a bit more established, but then Jadyn, you're just starting out, which is super exciting. And I think a lot of our audience are in a similar position. We often hear about people's success stories once everything's worked out, in like a kind of blasé way of saying it, but you're still building your career. So much like many people watching today, like I've just mentioned, what surprised you the most about entering the industry, just writing as a whole, or your experience with it?
Oh, what surprised me? I don't know what surprised me. I think I have learned a lot about myself in this process and just about how much I believe in, maybe quite stubbornly, in my words and work. Kind of quite similarly to what Gurnaik was saying, just that I write because I want to serve the writing and I want to serve myself. And obviously publication is a really exciting and wonderful goal to have, but I haven't been published really anywhere, to be honest. I mean, I write a little bit on Substack, and I've been published in my university, like anthologies. And aside from that, it's just anything that's out there is just stuff that I've put out myself. And I think that there's this big feeling, or I used to have this big feeling, that I need to publish whilst I'm still a young person, so that I feel like I've really accomplished something. And now I'm more of the opinion or feeling that I believe in my work and words and what I want to say, and I don't think that I need to do everything immediately, which is why I mentioned in my intro that my writing at the moment looks more like people and life research, and I'm spending a lot of time interacting with community. And I mentioned that I work for Free Books Campaign, and through that organization, I get such a beautiful access to literature and people who want to involve themselves in literature, whether that be through writing or just talking about writing or talking about the industry as a whole. And that's served me so greatly and been so important to my growth as a person, learning about what exactly I want to say in my work, and also learning about what people crave to hear, what is missing, what people are like searching for, and then in turn learning about what parts of that I find really important and inspiring. I was fortunate enough recently to meet with an agent who was at an event that my university held. We just had coffee and chatted, and we didn't really talk so much about my work. We mostly spoke about the other things that we were both interested in. But something that she did say about my work, which I hadn't thought I would hear from someone within the industry, was that it's okay if you aren't writing right now. It's okay if you are not ready right now to submit to like competitions, because I I think I've submitted to like 2 competitions in my life. It's all right if you're just building into yourself and growing through being alive and doing the things that you care about, because all of that is part of your writing practice. All of that is about becoming the writer that you want to be. So now I'm in a place definitely where I feel like I believe that what is meant to happen in terms of being a writer will come to me. And the writing itself is always the most important thing, and how it makes me feel it's just a very important practice to me that I can't see myself letting go of, regardless of if I publish or not.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing. I really appreciate that. So I guess what surprised you about entering the industry is like this idea that publishing isn't maybe the most important part of writing, right?
Yeah.
Which sounds obvious, but I think we've kind of lost that a little bit as I don't know, like post-pandemic, and like I think everything's just gotten a lot quicker, and this idea of like wanting your story or just like your narrative and what you want to put out into the world to be exposed quicker. But I think it's a really grounding statement, and also this idea of like who you are feeds into that writing, and if you can be authentic in that, then the writing will also mirror that as well. So thanks so much for sharing. And I guess as Jadyn is kind of entry level and has given that perspective, Sophie, you work with emerging creatives every day through Creative Access and the work that you do in training and mentoring especially. What's the biggest misconception people have about getting started?
Yeah, I think one misconception is that you need a lot of like specific dedicated time to start creating work, or that it kind of doesn't count unless it's dedicated time. Because a lot of our community are really, really busy. A lot of them might not always be employed in work that can utilize their creative practice, or if they are, they might be kind of more so like day to day working on executing other people's creative ideas. So they've got a lot on, and I'm always really inspired by what our community achieve creatively, and especially how much they kind of like uplift each other as well at events, and are really just invested in each other's creative goals. I think most of what I'm writing is at this point based on things that I've written like in notes on my phone. And I think writing the first 10,000 words was like weirdly easier than the rest of it, because it was just trying to see if I could start something. And then once I had to keep going, I was like, oh, this is really hard. Everyone was right. And I think kind of like Jadyn saying about life research, I think all of it living is kind of contributing towards writing in a way. And I think because I'm writing about restaurants, I find that like when I'm out and about in the world, that's when I have like certain memories that are really vivid, or things that kind of strike me as interesting about restaurants or restaurant work. Even on the tube, like when you can tell someone has just finished a shift, or you know that like because of the time of day they're going to a restaurant or a bar. And I wrote everything down on notes. So even if it's like one sentence or one idea or one thing that I want a character to do, those are all in notes. And I think when I was really stuck in the middle of writing a first draft, I would pull up a different note every day, and then I could build a lot of them into scenes, more than I thought, because at that point, I guess I'd already been thinking about writing it for like a long time, like for years. So I think if you really love your subject, or you're kind of holding it in mind all the time as a long-term project, there's a really decent chance that like a lot of the thoughts you have are going to be consistent with what you're trying to produce. Like instead of being really hard on yourself and thinking like, that you have to be in a certain mindset to write, I think it's more so that like if you've got a project in mind and you're really invested in it, probably everything you're doing in a way is a reflection of it. And if you just keep a little bit of a diary, or write down thoughts when they come to you, even if you're about to fall asleep, those things could actually be really helpful when you get stuck later on.
Yeah, I guess even this idea of like getting started, the way you're describing it, even if before you wrote those 10,000 words, you'd already started, because there was so much material that you had access to just from your notes app, like something, I guess, as simple as that. And it's, I think, bringing down the expectation of what finishing looks like, I think helps begin it maybe. So that's really helpful. And I think this idea of like, where do I begin, is something that a lot of the audience is battling with. I think across any industry, like just trying to get into something, it's a big question. I guess moving it back to writing, I wanted to ask Jem, if someone was looking to build momentum as a writer over the next 6 months, maybe, yeah, I guess that would be looking towards 2027, which is quite scary. Where would you tell them to start, or what should they focus on?
Yeah, I can speak for journalism, which is kind of what I know. But yeah, starting out is the hardest part because, at that point, you don't really know anyone in the industry. And at the very same time, you're probably the most financially insecure of your career. So I think an important first step is finding some kind of foothold to, cover your bills and your rent while you work your way up. That's really a crucial point. For me, that was like working in bars after I moved to London to kind of pay my rent and then just work on writing and reporting in my time off. But then I think early on, it's really crucial to kind of think very carefully about what kind of journalistic work you want to produce. Do you see yourself ideally doing sort of long form features? Do you want to be a news reporter who covers a particular beat? Do you see yourself writing about food or culture or politics or conducting investigations or something else? And then, your path will branch out from what you're interested in. And that, I think, doesn't have to be a difficult or hard decision. It can be just about following your curiosity. It's not necessarily about, blocking off the other routes. It's just about what are you interested in? What do you know? What do you want to know more about? Because, with sort of journalistic nonfiction writing, you're the conduit for the reader. So, if you're curious about something, passionate about something, when you go and research it and interview people and write about it, that's going to shine through, I think, in the finished piece of writing. So then, I think once you've figured that out, going and just reaching out to people whose work you admire is a really good place to start. So, maybe that's writers you look at who are 5 or 10 years into their career and you think, I'd love to have their job one day. Or maybe you love a particular section of a magazine or publication and you can speak to the editor there, or an author of a book that really spoke to you. I think writers tend to be flattered if they receive a message from someone early in their career, just earnestly asking them for a coffee or for advice or for a call. So I'd say go ahead and do that because, they may be able to offer you tips on how they got where they are, sort of pitfalls to avoid, or whatever it might be. But I think, to echo what others have already said when you're starting out to any aspiring writer is just start writing, Don't wait till anyone grants you permission because there are some jobs that, like being a long form writer, there's not like a job that you can really apply for and do that. You just sort of have to start coming up with ideas and learn the tools of doing the reporting to execute it. But you've just kind of got to start, and then eventually you'll come into contact with people who will want to sort of edit or publish your work. So I'd say just start writing or start collating your ideas, and then for journalism, trying to get it out there, whether that's pitching to editors or publishing on Substack. And I know we're going to come on talking about sort of rejections and pitching in a little bit, but don't lose heart if it takes a little while for things to get noticed. As you sort of build up a portfolio, you build up the amount of writing that you're proud of. That's the main thing. Hopefully then it will attract attention. So yeah, if you just keep that focus on producing work that, that you can stand behind and you're really proud of, then that's a really good way of beginning. And then also, finally, there are some great resources out there and great communities. So it can be overwhelming, particularly in sort of the media industry and journalism. It can be quite dominated by people with privileged backgrounds. It's actually got worse, according to the Sutton Trust, the report from last year. In some ways it's going backwards. So it can be super scary. But there are things like Creative Access, which is amazing. There's Study Hall, which is like a community in the US for writers and journalists of people kind of sharing stories or, editors' databases so you can know who to pitch. There's newsletters like Journo Resources or Freelance Writing Jobs that kind of send out pitch calls and things like that. But there are sort of areas where you can find solidarity and community with other like young writers. And I urge everyone to find those like bright corners in what can sometimes be a dark industry as well.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jem. Someone said my first long form investigation changed me. It took over 18 months to finish it. It was hard, but I'm proud of it. Which kind of
That's
speaks to that,
amazing.
having that like
Yeah.
dedication. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, some stories can really take a long time to get right, to get to that point where you're proud of them. But well done to whoever did that. And sometimes it will mean taking an idea to various different editors. And, you know, it'll only take that one editor to see the potential in the idea and sort of take you under their wing to, you know, improve the areas that need improving or whatever. And then you can be on your way to building like a body of work. So, yeah, well done to whoever did that.
Yeah, I think Albino. I don't want to mispronounce your name, but yeah, they've linked it so people yeah, please do have a read of that. 18 months is a long time. That's how like mums describe how old a child is, like 18 months. That's my only reference for that age. Jem, you mentioned, I guess, rejection, and I guess it's a big theme in our audience questions that were submitted. So rejection or rejected applications, pitches, manuscripts. And I think it's something almost every writer experiences, but I think we don't talk about it often, or writers don't, because it's something that's like, we don't talk about rejection because we're not trying to manifest that. But just speaking to all the panelists and all the speakers, could you share a rejection that looking back taught you something valuable? Anyone can jump in.
I don't mind jumping in because there's a lot of rejection in journalism, but
Yeah.
I just spoke a lot, so if other people want to talk.
I can't think of something off the top of my head.
Everyone's like, no, rejection is valuable. We don't want to talk about that.
Yeah,
I mean, there's like I can't count how many times I've had pitches rejected, but I think with journalism there's a specific rejection has a specific kind of place. And I've come to learn over my career that it's very rarely personal. You know, often it's because you might have a really amazing idea, you've done some of the groundwork, you pitch it to an editor, and they come back and say no, and you're like, "What's going on? Why have they said this?" But you know, that may be because they had a similar article a few months ago, or they've already assigned a journalist to that idea, they've used up their budget for the month, or you know maybe the idea is really strong but it hasn't been framed in quite the right way for that editor. You know, often a common pitfall for kind of reporters early on is framing something as like a topic rather than a story to an editor. But I just think like particularly with journalism, just it's not something to take personally. Just kind of collect those rejection slips and keep pushing forward. And you know, even if 30 editors reject an idea, it only takes one to run with it, and then you know your investigation about some really important thing might come and see the light of day and you know have an impact. So just don't take it personally and keep going.
Yeah.
I have thought of something actually.
Go on then.
This is slightly like veering off of writing, but within the same frame. Because I'm trying to break into different areas of the books industry, I had previously been offering to do volunteering for various things. And I got quite a brutal and, dare I say, unprofessional rejection from someone about volunteering for London Book Fair. And it was really upsetting, the way that this rejection happened. But within the same like space of time, I was also then asked to join Free Books campaign as an official team member, and that has now changed my life and made things so exciting for me. But the reason why I mention that is that something that Sophia Akal, the founder of Free Books Campaign, said to me when I initially approached her was always ask people. If you never ask, the answer is always no. So yes, there will be rejections, and no one likes to feel like something so personal to them is being ignored or not seen with the same value that you hold for it. But I'm a very strong believer that the doors that are meant to open for me will open, and if they don't open, then that just means it wasn't meant to be that way. And the path I'm taking is always with the best outcome at the end. So yeah, I remember also in university, one of the seminar leaders I had, Naomi Wood, she showed us a spreadsheet of the hundreds of rejections that she got compared to how many like acceptances she got. And I think there must have been about 7 like acceptances in the spreadsheet of over 100 rejections. She showed that to us to make a point of that there is going to be a lot of that, but that doesn't mean that your work isn't of value. And there is always something else that you can try, another way that you can go or look for ways to make yourself heard, because your work and your voice is always going to matter. It's just a little bit of a waiting game. And as Jem said, not taking it personally.
Thanks, Jadyn. That's really helpful. Yeah, I think it's like if you're going to be a writer or do any form of writing, rejection is kind of just kind of anticipate it. But I guess building your kind of resilience is really important. I think also it's interesting because Jem, you've given that perspective on what journalism looks like, right? Because that's your industry and what rejection can look like there, where it feels like someone maybe hasn't heard your voice in the way that you need. And I guess that might be similar for fictional writing as well, but conscious that earlier we were kind of saying like writing should be creative, but also for like living and breathing writing, it mirrors or goes into your work. So then that rejection can feel, it's really hard for it not to feel personal. So kind of, I guess, maybe asking the writers in the room, fictional writers, how are you navigating that, or have you navigated that? Gurnaik, maybe you've got a bit more like lived experience with that.
Yeah, I used to work as an editor, so on the other side of the equation, and obviously you're getting lots of sort of proposals come your way, and I was just thought like one, first of like how does it fit on my list? How much capacity do I have? It's the sort of same thing as Jem said. But then two, like, am I the right person? Like, do I have a vision of how I could take it forward? Because every time you saw a book, it was always flawed, like always. But there were some that I saw where I was like, oh, I have a very clear idea from reading it, how to fix this and how to make it better, how to make it the best version of itself. So often the rejection is more based on the editor themselves, like seeing where their vision is.
Yeah.
So it's not about just getting an editor, it's about finding like the right fit as well. So often in the process of being rejected, you're just sort of sifting out the editors that wouldn't have been right for the project. And that's not to say they weren't good editors. It's just that, you know, you want someone who has a vision that at once sort of aligns with you, but also surprises you. And that's how you're going to get your book to be an alloy of your vision and theirs. So yeah, I would see rejection as it's just a functional element of publication, and it's useful.
Yeah.
And often people
Yeah,
are rejected because it's just not good enough yet, and thus like time is the best editor.
Yeah.
No one owes you publication, right? It's not like a right. So just keep going.
Yeah, I appreciate kind of, I would say like an enemy behind the lines, but like an editor is not an enemy, but like having that perspective of like, this is why it doesn't work. And kind of, I think it's really useful to hear how like from an editor's perspective, how they would want to make things better. And if it doesn't make sense to them, then that's literally what it is. It's just almost like a puzzle piece or like weaving something together with the fragments that are available. And sometimes it just might not be that there's enough material or something's not working between you and that potential editor as well. Sophie, you've got your hand up.
I do. Yeah, just to add to that, pretty much building on what you and Gurnaik was saying, just because I've been on that kind of journey in the last year of like submitting for like short pieces of writing on short fiction. And I think I realized that a lot of the time the only reason I start writing a piece is because I've seen a call out and I see like a theme. So I think like what could I write that would fit this? And I think that's always going to lead to like a kind of, for me at least, like a worse feeling of failure because you're working to someone else's deadline. So I'll build like my whole week around it and it'll be like, well, this is due by the 19th and the theme is this and I don't have anything that I'm writing that really fits it. But I'm trying to make it work. And I think like I've been rejected from 100% of those submissions. And I think like it's really made me sit back and think like, why am I basing what I want to write off of other people's themes? Like they're amazing themes, but I think if I had a true practice of always writing what I want to write, then I think when I come across a deadline like that, I'll just think like, well, I've got the perfect essay for that. I've got the perfect short story. And it's more about finding homes for things rather than putting a lot of unnecessary pressure on myself to have a really good idea for that fits someone else's really good idea. Like they're a good idea for an issue.
It might, yeah, that's so interesting because also like when you were talking about your entry for the Women's Prize Discovery, it was quite like spontaneous and it was like a brief that maybe you hadn't considered before. So it might be that as well of like, oh, kind of chasing that feeling of like, oh, I've been given a brief and I wonder if I can write very quickly like I've done before. But like you're saying, it's not the same thing, or like it doesn't have that same freedom as well, which is really interesting, I guess. And also like, no, again, like we were all of, I guess, all the panelists here talking about what is exciting about writing. And I think even if you are anyone here who's seeing those briefs and is like, oh, I've just missed the deadline, or I feel like I've got lots of material, but how do I shape it into what they're looking for, at least that's still exciting and stimulating despite all of that rejection. Like you're seeing another one and it's like, oh, actually I think I could. So it does speak to that passion or interest is still very much alive. It's just, I guess, how can it live and breathe as well. Very conscious of time, so we'll be moving to the live Q&A shortly in probably like 5 minutes. So please submit any questions in the Q&A function. If you can't think of any yet, look at what other people have submitted and use the upvote function for your favorites as well. Whilst the audience continue to submit their questions, we'll do some quick fire advice to put everyone on the spot and add some adrenaline, but it's literally chill. The first question, or finish this sentence, one resource you'd recommend to an aspiring writer. So that could be a podcast, a book, newsletter, anything. Anyone want to kick off?
For fiction writers, the New York, what's it called? The New Yorker Writer's Voice and New Yorker Fiction Podcast. So it's all the stories that get posted on the New Yorker, but free to access if you've got Spotify. So one less thing to subscribe to. Sorry to the journalists.
I think for journalism, there's a now sadly defunct podcast called the Long Form Podcast, but it's still available on podcast apps for free. And it's like this treasure trove of interviews with nonfiction writers, essayists, journalists, book writers who just talk about how they did it, like how they produced the piece of work and all the kind of process questions behind the scenes. So I definitely recommend checking that out.
Nice, thank you.
This is less of a learning resource and more of a practice resource, but on Instagram and Substack, there are hundreds of e-magazines and signs that are free to submit your work to across all genres, themes, and like forms. If you're looking for practice in submitting, that comes with less hurt of the rejection because it's not a competition. Just look through these platforms online, particularly Instagram is where I found a lot of them, and you can submit your work, and also you can look through other people's work, what kind of stuff they're publishing, what other people are interested in, what other people like writing. Reading other people's writing is an important part of learning your own craft, so that's what I would recommend.
Yeah, I like that. Like I paint as like my creative output, so I just go to lots of galleries and see other people's paintings as a way of being like, oh, I'm still in my like process and like trying to figure out what I want to do as well. So that's really helpful. Sophie, do you have a resource? You don't have to say creative access, obviously.
Well, okay, I have the second one is creative access related. I actually want to recommend Gem, a writing course that I did with Gem, but I don't know whether you're doing it this year, so it might be putting you on this. Are you doing it?
Doing it in September.
Yeah.
It's a non-fiction writing course at City St. George's, and maybe we can put a link or somewhere. But yeah, Sophie, thank you so much for shouting that out.
It was, sorry, I'm like really putting you on the spot. It was fantastic. It's amazing. Gem's a really good teacher, but also offers direct feedback. And I didn't know what kind of course to do when I started writing, but then when I read the description, I thought this is perfect because I'm writing about characters that feel like real people. It's based on real life and real situations and real jobs. And so Gem's course is called Fact-Based Storytelling. And I think it will really, um, even if you're writing fiction, I think it will really teach you how to shape your writing to capture like the most interesting parts of life.
Thank you so
That's
much,
so
Sophie. That's so sweet.
Thank you.
Use code GEM10 for 10% off.
There is a
Sophie,
scholarship actually
Yeah.
for people from underrepresented backgrounds or facing financial difficulty. There's like one free ride for each cohort, which I was really happy to help kind of push for and secure. So yeah, I'll maybe drop a link in the chat and then people can follow that. There's more detail.
thanks, Jen. That's super helpful. So if you mentioned like being on that course, you got some feedback on your work. The first question, or one of the questions from the audience, Samantha's asked, how do you get feedback on your work in general? I'm having a difficult time getting friends/family or people I know to read their work, essentially. Are we showing our work when it's like in its, I guess, beginning stages, or what does that look like?
Is this for everyone?
Yeah, sorry, just for anyone.
I made the mistake of trying to send friends and family work when I'd finished my like manuscript for my first book. Then I realized like none of them actually read. So I think it's knowing like who are people who are actually like that's an exciting thing for them. So I got like really disappointed. I was like, oh, I sent it like months ago. No one's got back to me. It must be terrible. But I think, yeah, it's finding like-minded people and doing things like whether it's a course like that or finding an online community or whatever.
Yeah.
So now I have people who I will share work with because they're also writing. So it feels like a bit more like of a natural thing.
Yeah, that's cool. Jadyn, someone asked for more information on what Free Books is, and I think that's one of the communities or places that you joined, I guess, like to develop your writing or be around that world.
Yeah, so Free Books Campaign is a non-profit organization working to make arts and literature free and accessible to everyone. So we do lots of events and activations all for free, including giving books to people for free. We have like a link on our website where you can fill out a form to have a book sent to you from one of our many publishing partners for free. We do trips to Tate exhibitions, like paid exhibitions for free. And we're actually doing a festival on the 1st and 2nd of August, which is also free, with loads of authors, like industry professionals, people doing really cool stuff in the creative world, like directors and podcasters and influencers like bookstagrammers and anyone you can think of that might have something interesting to say about storytelling. We love to spotlight them. In particular, we give books by authors of color. I found Free Books Campaign, or I joined Free Books Campaign because I initially wanted to be working in the publishing industry, and then I realized that what I actually really love about literature and the books industry is the community and being with people, talking to people about the importance of storytelling and our voices. So Free Books Campaign joins up with lots of different organizations as well, and other groups like, I don't know, some people might have heard of Casual Readers Club. They do book clubs every month, multiple, and just other people in the community trying to make arts and literature something that anyone can have fun with. I write the newsletter for them, and I also do all of their social media. And this isn't like a direct or my usual style of writing, but I also think that everything is writing, kind of like Sophie said and Gurnaik said earlier. Everything you do can be writing. If you're writing, you're writing. Writing emails is writing. talking to your friends is writing, being with your community is writing. So if you're doing all of this intentionally and engaging with other people who love writing as well, that's all part of the writing practice. Definitely follow Freebooks Campaign on Instagram. I worked hard on it. But also we're doing really great community work, and I love seeing people come to these events and really enjoy things that maybe they're not usually used to having access to. So yeah.
Cool. I guess, yeah, surround yourself with writers, kind of get that feedback where you can, and join those communities where you feel safe as a writer, but also identify and kind of can relax a little bit. I think finding like a level of connection with other writers is super important. Whatever the other, like, I guess writing manifests in lots of different ways, like Jadyn's mentioned as well. Someone has said, Peter has said, I was wondering what building the writing practice look like for you? It ebbs and flows around commitments and whatever life throws at us, but were there many hurdles when building useful habits? And was there a moment when you realized you'd managed to build some kind of consistency? Some of the answers might be like, there is no consistency yet, but for anyone who has, I think it's a really good question.
I just want to say I find it really, really hard, and that I thought that after spending a year kind of working on one project that it would get easier, and it doesn't. And I have like, I can literally see it right now. I have like a little flashcard, and I draw boxes, and I get to color in a box every time I write 1,000 words. And if I get really, really stuck, I go down to 50. So there's 50 words, then 100, then 150. And I think that really helps because you only really need to write 50 to 100 words to get into like a little bit of a flow. And you only need to get really excited about writing 1,000 words to want to do it again, or even like 60 times. So, like, yeah.
Have you tried turning your table around?
I haven't done that yet. So maybe, and my chair turns as well. So yeah, it could work.
Any other kind of ways that people have built their habits?
For me, I spend the last 10 minutes of a shift like making notes for the next shift. So it just means when you turn up, you're not having to like start from zero, because you're like, oh yeah, I did have that idea for where the scene might go next, or whatever.
Yeah, I like that it's even called shifts as well. Kind of means you can clock out and not think about it, but you've already done that thinking right at the end as well. That's cool. Any other thoughts from people?
I free write a lot, so I handwrite everything first. Everything that I've ever put anywhere has been handwritten before it was put onto my laptop, and I think that kind of helps me to just. It was almost like I'm in the mode of journaling, but I'm writing whatever I want to write. And I don't know, when I'm handwriting stuff, I don't feel the need to go back and make sure that I spell everything correctly, because you kind of just scribble as you go. Whereas when I'm doing it on my laptop, I might kind of sit at the blank screen and think, oh, I need to fill a page and have this many words. But if I don't know the word count and I'm just writing without really thinking too much about it, that kind of helps me get in the flow of it. And that's something that I have as part of my practice. But I'm definitely not the person to talk to about consistency, because it's not there.
I think we're all still learning it in different ways. Does everyone, so like aside from Jadyn, is everyone else just writing straight onto their laptop?
I mean, for me, I have reporting notebooks when I'm like out reporting, which I'll then transfer onto my laptop, but I write into the laptop. I just have a software for my book called Scrivener, which is like £40, and it's really been helpful for like a big project to just like throw in all the research and all the like different documents. I think if I was just doing it on like Word or GDocs, I would have just been totally like drowned. But it's been really helpful, so that might be worth checking out for people who are like embarking on a very long project.
Cool. Someone has asked, how do you know when you're Clarice has asked, how do you know when you're absolutely done with editing/writing? Do you just accept a deadline and it is what it is and you can't work on it anymore, or do you keep going until there's nothing else you'd change?
I would say it's never fully done. On publishing both my books, whenever I have to do events, I always have to do a quick edit before I read from it. But I will say that for me, it was like when I started making changes to it, and then I'd like leave, go for a walk, and then come back and undo that change I did. When you start to become cognizant that you're making it worse, not better, that's when it's a good idea to sort of telling you to stop.
Yeah,
Anyone else?
I totally agree that it never feels done. There's no like end point where you get a feeling. Um, One day you just have to kind of stop. But also, I think what Gurnaik was saying about reading aloud, that's usually one of the last phases for me is like reading aloud, and then you first of all you realize where you've made like easily fixed errors, but then you just can learn, where you should just swap a few words around because it sounds unnatural, or you don't like the rhythm in this particular section. So I think reading aloud when you think you're done can then give you an even like greater bit of kind of ironing towards the end. So yeah, that's a good piece of advice.
Yeah, I think because I'm just, I guess, curious about what writing looks like. But is there ever this thing where if I guess someone's submitting to an editor or wants to submit something, you kind of over edit, hope trying to look for what someone else might be looking for. And I feel like that is again probably when to stop over editing your work. That's just my instinct from looking on the outside, but I don't know what that's like as like a live writer.
Yeah, I think with editing, it's I'd say for me the process is like 25% writing, 75% editing. So there's no such thing as over editing, I think, because that's where for me like the book actually comes to be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Maybe a little insight into my process if it's useful for anyone is because I find if I do track changes edits and you're just like making notes and then accepting the notes, you're sort of not very active in the process. And I think a lot of the tips like Jadyn writing by hand or Jem speaking aloud is like ways to trick yourself into being active when naturally you're, as you scan text, your brain's sort of like switching, turning into a reader, not a writer. So for me, what I do is I put my like, I have two windows. One on the left side has my current draft, and then I open a new window on the right, which has a blank page, and I'll retype the entire thing start to finish. And by actually the act of like typing every word, you're really thinking, is this good? Is this good? Is this good? Constantly. And you're staying active through the whole process. And then when I get to the end of that, I move that to the left and then start again. And it's just a constant process of sifting through like that. Because I think we sort of see maybe from movies this idea of like a strike of inspiration and then the work just floods out of someone, but really for me and from talking to other writers I find it's mainly an iterative process, one of small decisions constantly.
Yeah, I think it's really helpful kind of sharing your process. I'm sure a lot of people found that useful. Thanks so much. Well, a question from Ida. Do you feel like you need to have a social media presence to, oh, I've just lost the question. Oh, to make yourself more visible slash build your brand and get opportunities?
I'll speak as a not very good at social media person. I just use my Instagram like a website. I don't have to pay for a domain, but I don't. Yeah, I'm not good at it. So if anyone has tips or is a bit more involved,
I'm also not sure about this because I mean, I share my writing on my personal account, but I don't like I usually do that on my story and not on my like main grid. But then I also run a social media for the free books campaign, so I've learned a lot about social media. I see so many authors doing really fun and cool things with their Instagrams to promote their work. And I don't know, I don't want to say that it's necessary because I don't think it should have to be necessary. I think maybe that it's something that you do if you feel like that's another way to, I don't know, be creative. It's another creative outlet and not feel pressured to have a Instagram platform as a writer. Um, I think, yeah, I don't know. Not everyone's like good with social media or likes it very much, and that's completely fine. And yeah, I would say just do it. Do it if you like to post on social media, and if not, then it's fine, and you can just
Yeah.
continue as you are.
It's not going to make
Yeah,
an impact to sales unless you're like truly viral. So it's more for like self congratulation than anything, I think.
Is
Yeah,
that different in business in Gem, or is it similar?
well, I deleted all my social media sort of around the time I started my book, and it honestly feels very blissful, and I do not regret it for a second. Um, I don't know how whether I would have made that same decision at the very beginning of my career when I was still like making connections in the industry with editors and so on, or how I'll feel when like my book comes out in a year or two, because I don't know, it's been so nice not having social media, but it is kind of a part of the world we live in. So I'm
Mm.
not sure really. I'll let other people answer that who kind of know more about it than me.
Yeah, I think it's maybe not the most integral thing with it just depends how you want to platform yourself, just from I guess working like creative access works across so many different sectors and I think social media plays is really important, but it just depends on how you want to use it. So and I feel like everyone in this panel has said the same thing. We've got another question. Joy has asked, I work full time and really struggle to find time/energy to write. What advice do you have for writers balancing work alongside their writing?
This is oh
But
sorry.
you go.
This is something I also struggle with, so I'm keen to hear what other people say. But yeah, that's kind of why a lot of my writing practice is people research, because time is just feels like it's never there. But I think not putting too much pressure on yourself at this moment if you're struggling to find time, or even like things that small things you can do, like Sophie said, she writes a little bit on her notes app when she gets inspiration while she's out and about, or maybe on your commute to work you can note something down, or at the end of your day even journaling. All of these things, like I said, everything is writing, and I don't think a writing practice whilst working full time has to look like a traditional writing practice. You have to do what works for you and what works for your schedule, and be kind to yourself and understanding that like we have to work to live. And it's really hard, and you want to spend time doing the thing that you love, but just give yourself grace, I think, and know that the time will come to you. Um, Even if it's in the tiniest moments, all of that's building towards something.
Yeah, for me, it was when I started a new job, it would be like, okay, that's your priority. It takes all your energy. And it might be like, oh, I want to reserve a half an hour slot in the week, whether it's like a Saturday morning or a lunch break on Tuesday. And then for that half an hour slot, you just turn up and you really just treat it like this is your priority. And you might find, okay, that went well. So now I have like you feel more energized as you put more energy into it. And then maybe you can add another one, or you can change it to an hour slot. And then suddenly you've doubled the amount you've got. And then you'll find these little pockets in the week, I think. But a key part is, I think, knowing when is useful to be at your desk. Because the sort of gestation period is probably more useful. You go for a lunchtime walk, right, and think about your stuff than it is just to think, oh, I need to be at my laptop writing right now. And it all sort of counts.
Thanks. Jamie has said, hey, look at that. I've written 1,000 words today, brackets, feverishly typing up all of your pearls of wisdom, which I think is quite nice. We've got 1 more minute left before we wrap up. Oh, Sophie, you got your hand up.
Yeah, just in
Sorry.
terms of energy, because I was just thinking about it in terms of like when you have to work full time and you kind of you have like a limit to your energy in the day, but including like brain space. And I think like at least for me, I have only a couple of hours of um, really good brain space a day, and it's in the morning, and there's none else to spare. So I think like just being realistic about what you can prioritize in a day. Like if I only have an hour of really good thinking in the morning, do I really have it in me to like wake up an hour before work and spend it on writing, or is today a day where I'm going to be like extra good at my job or extra good at ice cream? I think it's like it's really fair to juggle through those things and not have writing always be your number one priority in that sense. And I think like every time I've had a break from writing, I can feel it because I'm excited actually the next time I go back to it. And so if you really struggle with energy and like weeks go by and writing hasn't been your priority, I kind of think that's okay, because when it is your priority, you can feel it, if that makes sense. And realistically, like we do need, like especially in the mornings, need that time sometimes for like a lot of other important things.
Yeah, Izzy said, I'm really glad you've covered that. Writing is a priority or not your energy. Thank you. Just conscious of time and would love to wrap up. Laura's put a feedback code, so let us know if this was an informative and useful masterclass. I just want to wrap up by asking each of the speakers to finish this sentence. A sustainable writing career is built by ... whatever you guys, however you guys see that ending. Who wants to go first?
Having fun and still enjoying it, not treating it
Yeah.
like a thing to do.
Yeah, that's going to be a great soundbite for our comms team. Yeah, anyone next?
A stubborn belief that you and your words matter, no matter what the context or situation.
Period. Anyone want to go next? Jem, Sophie?
I would say a sustainable writing career is built by persistence, craft, luck, and community.
Nice.
Yeah, agree on community. I was going to say it's built by lots of people. I think like even conversations I had with other waiters and waitresses, conversations I had with my manager, Richard, shout out, like all of those people are contributing to my work because it's other people are holding me accountable. Like it's a solo project, but I'm definitely being held accountable by people that are excited for me and invested. So it feels like a group effort if you have people around you.
Cool. Thanks so much, guys. That's the end of the masterclass. Again, thank you so much to all the speakers for sharing your pearls of wisdom, sharing your insight and your experience. I think writing is such a subjective process, so I feel very grateful that each of you have shared what that looks like for you in reality, and also given advice and guidance, which I know the audience found really helpful. It was a super engaged chat function and Q&A. So yeah, it's been our most well attended and super well engaged. So it just speaks to your guys' value and expertise, and I feel very lucky to be in conversation with everyone here today. So yeah, thanks everyone. I think Laura will now end the masterclass. Thank you all.
Thanks for coming, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.